everyone. Welcome to Total Football Talk. I'm Anthony.
I'm Eric.
Eric, I got to say two things today. I'm giving credit where credit's due. You called the Rams blowing out the Saints. I want to start with that one. Also, LT, I'm going to give him credit where credit's due. LT from Combat Sports Talk LA said that the Eric Weddle trade was a good trade or a free agent pickup and said that he could really solidify that defense. I did not believe him, but I'll tell you, I had my doubts, but LT called it, and I know you were kind of a fan of the free agent move too. What it did is it provided more than just Aqib Talib out on the field. See, Aaron Donald is a leader of the defense, but he's a silent leader. He doesn't lead by being verbal or taking command of the huddle. He just kind of leads by example. Aqib Talib was kind of the fatherly figure. Guys looked up to him for the Rams. And then, of course, you bring in a guy like Weddle, and now you have two of those guys on one defense. It's only going to help, apparently. And I fully admit I was wrong on the Aqib Talib on the Eric Weddle move. So props go out to you two. Eric, why don't you go ahead and cover this game first?
Well, I really think it would have been a lot closer had Drew Brees stayed in the whole game. The dynamics of the game really changed when Teddy Bridgewater came in. He is the highest paid backup quarterback in the NFL. He didn't want to go to Miami for some reason last year, so he signed a deal with the Saints to back up Brees. He's a free agent after this year, and I'm really curious what the Saints are going to do going forward since they haven't committed to Bridgewater, and they're probably going to use both him and Taysom Hill. Now, I figured as soon as Brees went down, and there were updates up the wazoo regarding Brees with his thumb, and they even showed him trying to grip a football, and he couldn't. It was like, okay, well, is this game going to get out of hand or what? Because they just didn't have the same type of offensive firepower as when Drew Brees is there, and that takes Michael Thomas down a notch. That takes Alvin Kamara down a notch. That literally takes out Jared Cook as well. So there are a lot of skill position players who actually come back down to earth without Drew Brees on the field. That's how much of a difference he makes with the Saints. On the flip side of the ball, fluke injury, I hope there's nobody saying, oh, Donald did it or whatever. But, Brees would let the ball go, obviously. Everybody's seen the replay. It hit Donald's hand, and Donald was doing exactly what he trying to do, break up the pass. So, the Rams' defense was very stifling. Congratulations. You actually shut the New Orleans Saints out of the end zone for about the first time in 3 years. That was talked about a lot later on during the Monday night game. And, the Rams offense actually took off after Brees went off the field with Cooper Kupp having 120 yards. He was about 6 inches away from scoring.
Yeah, I thought
and Jared Goff hit the receivers that he needed to hit. And really, it really wasn't much of a game after Brees departed. I'm not saying the Saints would have won or anything. I still think the Rams would have beaten the Saints in that matchup, with Brees or not.
You had him beating him badly. You had him beating him badly. I said you had him beating him badly.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely I did. Because I knew the Rams were ticked off that the whole offseason was spent talking about the Saints and boo-hoo Saints this and boo-hoo Saints that. And, defensive pass interference can now be reviewed, and now that's going to lead to other stuff being reviewed, and it's just making the offseason of what the Rams accomplished. Yes, they went to the Super Bowl and lost, but it takes away from the NFC champion Rams, not the we just missed out on being NFC champ Saints. You should have ran the ball. How many more times do I have to say that? But the Rams took care of business, and I knew they would. And they were the better team going into the game. Goff did what he had to do. The receivers did what they had to do, and the defense did what they had to do. And congratulations to the Rams for starting out 2-0.
I'm going to say what I've been saying for the last 3 years. Jared Goff is not a bust, and this particular quarterback that the Rams have has shown more grit and has done more with less than other quarterbacks on the Rams that have had a lot of talent. And what I mean by that is, I think of Kurt Warner, right? Kurt Warner had Isaac Bruce, Marshall Faulk, Torrey Holt, Oz Hakeem, Conwell. Now I'm getting Cromwell and Conwell mixed up. He had a great offensive line. He had a phenomenal defense. Jared Goff, you've got Cooks, Woods, and Kupp. Now, we don't know what Kupp's career is going to be. I would compare Cooks to Torrey Holt. But I would say there's no one on this Ram roster that comes close to the talent of Isaac Bruce. There's no one on this Ram roster with the speed of Oz Hakeem. And as much as I love Todd Gurley, it's Marshall Faulk circa 2004, not Marshall Faulk circa 99. And yet Jared Goff, and the offensive line is nowhere near as talented. And yet all Jared Goff does is goes out there and performs. You talk about durability. He's gotten pounded these last 2 games. And what has he done? He steps up and he performs in big games. He performed very well against Atlanta in the wild card game. Go back and watch it. He performed very well against Dallas when he was asked to make plays. He's the reason we won the NFC Championship game. And in the Super Bowl, if his players make plays, his numbers are going to look a lot different. There were at least two. I'm not going to say 3 because that third one's up in the air, but definitely 2 touchdowns that were dropped throughout the course of the game. Several third down conversions that were dropped, and he had to do it with Josh Reynolds, Robert Woods, and a double-teamed Brandon Cooks, and an injured and hampered Todd Gurley. And yet, he still went out there and kept, in my opinion, the Rams afloat offensively. They didn't look great at all. But when they did move the ball, it wasn't because of the running game, right? So what are you saying, Anthony? Are you saying Jared Goff performed in the Super Bowl? No. I'm saying if these players had picked him up, I think Jared Goff would have had a very different Super Bowl conversation right now. It's a lot like Kurt Warner in Super Bowl 36 against the Patriots. They were losing that game 17-3 before guys finally started making plays. The problem where the difference here is for the Rams, they didn't have guys making plays. Kurt Warner had his Cooper Kupp in Ricky Prohl, right? Kurt Warner had an Isaac Bruce. Jared Goff didn't have that. Jared Goff didn't have his Ricky Prohl. Jared Goff had a good receiver in Robert Woods, but he's not fast like Oz Hakeem was. You know what I mean? So it's a different personnel. I know comparing oranges and apples. What am I getting at? Once again, Jared Goff outperforms a top-level quarterback. Even when Breeze was in the game. Okay, I know Breeze got hurt midway through the second quarter, and the complete dynamics of the game changed. The other thing that I think is funny is I hear announcer after announcer after announcer after announcer go, oh, the Saints touchdown, that's momentum shifter. It would have changed the game. Except if the officials were to call the actual call entirely through. Yes, it was a fumble. Yes, he picked it up. No, they shouldn't have blown the whistle, but they should have called roughing the passer. That touchdown would never have happened if the officials had made the right call throughout the play anyway. So the Rams got screwed because they lost the football on the bad call when it should have been 1st and goal. But did the Rams complain? Did the Rams cry? Did the Rams scream at officials? Did Sean McVay completely lose his focus? No, the Rams stopped New Orleans and then they dominated the second half. Because that's the difference between a winning organization like Los Angeles and a losing organization like New Orleans. And I'm talking traditionally, holistically, looking at the whole body of the organization from the beginning to now. New Orleans has had short runs of good teams and a long stretch of bad teams. And once Drew Brees retires, I'll be very interested to see where this franchise goes. For Los Angeles, they've had some down times, but there's been more ups than downs throughout their history if you look at their stretches. They've only had one real bad losing stretch, and that's mostly in St. Louis. The longest they went in LA with losing seasons was like, I think 5 years at one point. Other than that, they were golden, and that was in the 90s before they left for St. Louis. There's a lot of things I liked about this game. I liked the way the defense played. I liked the way Jared Goff played. I liked the way the team is utilizing Todd Gurley and Malcolm Brown. But what I really liked was Demby. When Demby came in the game, and I've been following Demby since he was at the University of Maine, I was ecstatic. Eric, you remember when the Rams drafted him. This kid graded out higher than Blythe did last year at any point. I graded him out. I went back and I watched a lot of the highlights and I watched a lot of the game because it was on YouTube. And I was just looking at Demby when he was in the game, and I graded him out at about an 85. The highest I had ever graded Blythe out was an 83, and he did that 4 times last year. Now, my thing's really simple. Do you beat the defender on the first initial step? When the defender makes his move, do you put yourself in position? Is the pressure coming from you because of a combo block? Are you able to get your guy walled off for the running game? How are you doing on head-to-head blocking when it's coming up your hole? Does your guy get his arm out, or is he hook blocked inside? There's a lot of different things that I look at as a coach that I liked from Demby. And I'll tell you, when Blythe comes back from injury, if the Rams are smart, they're going to keep Whitworth, they're going to keep Notebloom, they're going to keep Allen, they're going to keep Demby, and they're going to move Blythe to right tackle, and they're going to put Havenstein on the bench. If they do that, I think the Rams have the best offensive line in the NFC, and it's not even close. And that's a big departure from where I was in the beginning of this season. So these last 2 games, I've seen Notebloom and Allen really grow against good quality defenses. And yes, I do think New Orleans has a good quality defense. Those guys can get after the quarterback, and there's some real ball players on that D-line. Their secondary is a little less to be desired, but that front 3, front 4 is really good in New Orleans. And those front 7 are pretty good in Carolina, rather. Now, they're not as good as they are with some other teams, but they're still a quality unit. So that line is starting to show me something. That's my assessment of the game. I love the way Demby played. I hope he stays in, and we got to do something about right tackle, and I think that something could be Blythe when he gets back from his injury. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've pretty much hit the whole Rams game already.
Yeah. Seattle, Pittsburgh. I'll be brief. Pittsburgh's as bad as I said they were going to be. Now, unfortunately, a guy that I like is now starting. I like Mason Rudolph. I've liked Mason Rudolph since Oklahoma State. Eric, you know that. We've talked at great length about my feelings about him. I just don't know. I just don't know that there's enough talent in Pittsburgh to help them out this year. And, I mean, they're going to double team Juju Smith-Schuster, which means your tight end's going to have a lot more targets. But, I mean, we'll find out if Vance McDonald is a good enough tight end to carry them to, 2 or 3 wins by himself. Connor was figured out before the knee injury. He wasn't impressive at all this year when he was in. They got film on him, and he's an average back. And I was getting really irritated hearing people say, oh, the Steelers don't need Le'Veon Bell. They've got Connor. Connor's a gosh darn joke. I'm sorry. Connor is not a good running back. He's a one-trick pony. He's got one speed, and it's not fast. He can catch, but he isn't going to break anything for you. And he's not a power runner. He's just kind of a meh runner who was benefiting from a really good wide receiving core that was naturally opening holes. Now that Brown is gone from 3 teams, Pittsburgh, Oakland, and now New England, we'll get to that later, there's that extra back in the box, and it's all over. It's all over for this kid. And the injury is going to hopefully be okay. I don't want to see anyone suffer an injury and be out for long periods of time, but Connor wasn't he was an average running back in an above average offense, and now the offense is average and the back is average, and the quarterback before Mason Rudolph was below average and dwindling, and he had one talented receiver and a tight end that widely got ignored. So Pittsburgh, they almost won the game, which I think speaks volumes for how bad Seattle's also going to be this year. I mean, I laugh. I look at the Seahawks, and yeah, they beat the Bengals, and yeah, I was high on Cincinnati. But the Bengals look awful after their performance against San Francisco, and they only beat them by one in Seattle. So what does that tell you? It's going to be very interesting to watch those two teams moving forward. I'm sure you have a difference of opinion. Talk about this game, because this was one of the ones this was the game I picked.
Right, and actually I agree with you a lot on what you said about Pittsburgh, only because, like, we don't really know what Mason Rudolph is going to come in and do for the Steelers. And it's not like that they have an easy first game. They have to go out to San Francisco, or I should say Santa Clara, and go play the Santa Clara 49ers. Which, surprisingly, the 49ers 2-0. They've had like two big wins. I feel at the beginning of the year, where I think one of those games could have went a different way for them. However, they're sitting there 2-0. They're welcoming Pittsburgh in. What is Mason Rudolph made of? I know you're really high on the kid. The problem is when you hear of an organization, and this goes for any organization, because I can point out numerous on both hands, is that when you draft a quarterback, whether you label him as a successor or you label him as, hey, you know what, we got good value on this guy and we're going to bring him in and have him fight for the number 2 job. I really do think that the starting quarterback should kind of take him under his wing, let him learn the ropes of the NFL. Not be like, here, I want you to take my job, but here, learn the ropes. Like the Broncos, when they drafted Drew Lock, and Flacco's like, oh, I'm not going to help him. Like when the Steelers drafted Rudolph, and Ben's like, oh, whatever. Like when the Packers drafted Rodgers, and Favre's like, whatever. Okay, like, don't you want the organization to succeed after you're gone? I mean, you're not going to be there forever. So we're going to see what kind of cut of the jib that Mason Rudolph has, and I'll watch him closely, definitely. But I'm going to go on the other side of the ball, Seattle. Listen, what they did in Week 1, 2 targets to Tyler Lockett in the fourth quarter. They caught one and scored a touchdown. They threw the ball his way as much as they could. They gave him 12 targets, which is a career high for him, 10 catches, which is a career high for him. Now, he only had 79 yards, but he moved the chains for the Seahawks. He opened up holes for Will Dissly, scoring 2 touchdowns, for DK Metcalf scoring a touchdown as well. The Seahawks did exactly what they needed to do to come out and win the game. And, hey, you know what? It's not easy to go into Pittsburgh and win a game historically. Now could be a different story, but Seattle did something that they typically don't do well, and that's win on the road. Yes, they've had their years where they were really good, but Seattle, I don't know, this could be a confidence booster for them heading into Week 3, but they still don't have the offensive firepower. They're going to rely on the run quite a bit. I just think Seattle is overachieving right now, and I think the Steelers are going to underachieve all year.
Well, I don't think it's overachieving. I think Pittsburgh's a bad football team. I mean, I don't know how many more times I need to say it. And yes, okay, Anthony, you're bragging about being 2-0 with Pittsburgh and calling the Steelers, but look at your Bengals. I get it. Across the board, I get it. The reason I was high on the Bengals was the same reason I was low on Pittsburgh. And this is really a weird year, because when you have 5 linemen who are as capable as the Bengals linemen are, and you're not able to score, and you're not able to beat average to bad football teams, it really is surprising, because you look at Pittsburgh with an offensive line that's meh, and they have been for a while. I know everyone raved about their offensive line, but how many times did Ben Roethlisberger get hit in the last 3 years? How many times?
A lot.
Right. How many times?
A lot, but not A lot, but not as much as Deshaun Watson.
No, and not as much as what's his name in Carolina, Cam Newton, but still a lot more than an offensive line that should be considered good. So it's just weird because you've got some teams like the Bengals. I'm just scratching my head. I'm like, I don't get it. The formula's there. Good running back, decent enough quarterback, wide receiver talent, tight end talent, good front five, decent defense, good corner, good safety. What's going on? I don't understand. And then you look at Pittsburgh and you're like, oh, the very same things I said they were weak in, that the Bengals were strong in, the Steelers are 0-2. But yet the Bengals are also 0-2. So you're just like, I don't know. It's a weird year. There's too many holes in Pittsburgh. And maybe one draft can fix it. A couple free agent pickups. I mean, we know the Pittsburgh organization is a solid organization, but I'm really curious to see what life's going to be like after Ben Roethlisberger. And I'll tell you something else. Rudolph's going to get a lot of criticism for if he does underperform. And I just want you guys to understand something. Ben Roethlisberger didn't allow for Rudolph to get snaps with the starters. So he's basically got to go through training camp, preseason, and then get into the regular season games before he's actually going to show what he can do. So I'm expecting this year, with 15 games to go, almost a total wash. I will be, or 14 games to go.
I will give Roethlisberger credit with this. He wasn't the happiest about Rudolph being drafted, but you know what? You're on the team, deal with it. However, just to give everybody an idea, now the rumor has it that Roethlisberger is going to undergo Tommy John surgery. And if you're familiar with baseball at all, Tommy John surgery typically kicks you out for a year, and that's big for pitchers. However, it's a shorter span, a shorter amount of time for football players. You rarely actually ever hear it for football players, but apparently his elbow was bad enough to where he's going to need Tommy John surgery. But what I like what he said was, I'm going to put my coach's hat on, and I'm going to be on the sidelines, and I'm going to mentor the kid. And I like what I heard out of that because, Roethlisberger is one of those grizzled old veteran players, and he's going to lend his support to Rudolph. And you don't get a lot of quarterbacks saying, you know what, I'm going to be there. Like, I could just picture Rodgers getting hurt and Deshaun Kaiser coming in and Rodgers being ruled out for the year. I don't think you'd ever hear Rodgers say that, or even be on the sideline, or even.
Well, and that's where I'm going to say, at least with Rodgers, he's honest. With Roethlisberger, the way this man reacted to Mason Rudolph getting drafted, snubbing him in the locker room for the last year and a half, and widely ignoring him in the quarterback's room. Now that you're out, now you're going to put your coaching hat on. You're going to really mentor the kid. You haven't mentored the kid in a year and a half. If I'm Mason Rudolph, I'm like, yeah, okay, you're going to mentor me. I'll believe it when I see it. That's my attitude if I'm Mason Rudolph. I wouldn't be surprised if Mason Rudolph walks up to Ben Roethlisberger and says, do me a favor and go throw stones. I don't want anything to do with you. You're a piece of trash, because of the way he's treated him since he got drafted. And I'm sorry.
And that could happen too.
Yeah. So, it's one of those things, if I were Mason Rudolph, I'd keep my mouth shut. But I'd put everything he tells me through a filter, and I'd really question its integrity and its honesty, because he's been nothing but a scumbag to Mason Rudolph since he got drafted. And I have no, it's not like Joe Montana and Steve Young, where they brought in another quarterback from another organization who was supposed to be the next big thing and tried to, take Joe Montana's job. This wasn't that situation. This wasn't Joe Montana's situation. This was Aaron Rodgers, right? This was Brett Favre. They drafted him for the idea that he would eventually be his replacement. So I don't know. We'll have to see how all that goes. The other game that we picked, Eric, refresh my memory. Which game was it?
Philly, Atlanta.
Yes. We'll get to that one. Do you want to do that one last, or do you want to do that one now?
We'll do that one now. We'll save the Bears for last.
Okay. So with this game, take it away, Eric, because we both called Atlanta in a close one. But wow, what a game, huh?
Yeah, yeah. This was a great game, and honestly, this could go either way. I think the big turning point where Atlanta wins this game is the Nelson Aguilar drop down the sideline, where all he had to do was catch the ball, run 30 yards, and he could just walk right in. But man, what a turn of events! Like, yeah, I know Matt Ryan, and I said he'd have a great game, and he did statistically outside the 3 interceptions, but those 3 interceptions, man, that kept Philly in the game. But he was hitting Julio Jones. He was hitting Calvin Ridley. He was hitting Austin Hooper. And you know what? I hate to say it, but I really hope this is not the last of Devontae Freeman and as him as a runner, because I know he still has a lot left in his tank. But man, Ito Smith looked fresh. He looked better. He hit holes a lot harder than Devonta Freeman did. But you got to take what the defense gives you. If they don't, if Philly defense doesn't believe that Ito Smith can beat him, I mean, he's going to find holes. Matt Ryan, he did exactly what he did, and I'm going to get to my favorite play here in a moment. But give credit to Philadelphia as well. They had a lot of injuries. Deshaun Jackson went out. I don't even know how much he played, if he played at all. He went out with an abdominal strain that actually crept up on him. We didn't know about it, what it was, until later on this week. 4 or 5 days after the game was played. Alshon Jeffrey had a calf injury. He was out. So they're relying on Nelson Aguilar, who actually led all receivers in that game with 107 yards receiving. But they also had to rely on a rookie. They had to rely on Sproles. They had to rely on Sanders and Jordan Howard. And they had to rely on Zach Ertz. Dallas Goedert, another tight end that they drafted last year, he was out. He didn't even play. He had a calf injury as well. So I'm like, what's going on in Philly with all these injuries, But, when you hear Deshaun Jackson, soft tissue injury, listen, you know it's going to be a couple weeks before he comes back, because the dude can't just handle it and rub some dirt on it and get back out there with the football pads. And that's a big loss to Philly, especially stretching the field. So they lost a lot of their ability to stretch the field with Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson, which really limited Philly what they could do. But they still went over the middle. They still gave it to the running backs. They relied on Carson Wentz more than ever after he's diving into the end zone and whatnot. But, man, when it comes down to a play and somebody has to make it and you're at home, and who do you give the ball to but your best player? Anthony, I hope you watched this play 7,000 times, and I hope you played it for your football team, and we should put it on the site. But the screen pass to Julio Jones that capped off the victory with Jake Matthews letting the blitz go by him and him laying on top of one of the cornerbacks, so allowing Julio Jones to get free and run 20.7 miles per hour to the end zone. Nobody was going to catch him. I mean, dude was flat out like, nobody's going to catch me, and you guys can all eat my dust, and everything like that. The Phillies got no chance. And, man, they showed a happy Bruce Matthews in the stands with his son's jersey on, and I'm like, man, that's one proud papa right there. You could tell. Like, it was seriously one of the best called plays that wasn't play action that I've seen in years. And I know football is so offensive right now. It's something you don't see as much. You just see all these bland run up the middle for 2 yards, throw a 3-yard pass, and then run for another 3 yards, and then punt.
It was a classic example, Eric, of jabbing all day long. They ran a couple of variations of the screen pass, never that one. They ran Julio on a lot of short stop routes to set that up. They put him on a lot of verts in the second half to set that up. Huh?
Yeah, they did.
And so to me, the reason it's such a perfect call is they knew what they were doing. They saved it for that moment. I remember coaching against Salt River. We won a game with 37 seconds left. We had the ball at our own 36-yard line. And we had no timeouts, and I called a screen pass. And one of my coaches was during the time, because we had just called a timeout to set it up, our last one. And they're like, wait, why are you calling a screen pass? No one runs a screen pass right here. And I'm like, exactly. And they're like, the coach is like, no, this is a bad call. And I'm like, you're telling me they're expecting it. He's like, no, I'm like, I'm putting the ball in the best athlete on the team's hands with a convoy in front of them, and we're letting them rush because you know they want to get a sack to end this game. We're going to let the rush come in. We're going to dump it to our best player, and he's going to follow our best three blockers downfield untouched for a touchdown. And that's exactly what happened. And we set it up because they had sacked us a few times, and we had used him on some wheel routes, chip blocks and go out, but never that play. And we set it up perfectly. It's one of those things, a great coach doesn't try to score a touchdown on every down. He tries to set up first downs and big plays for later in the game by conceding first and second down for the sake of third down, for the sake of a touchdown. And that's what we saw. And it was a great call. I agree. It was a great call. It was well coached. That's the other thing that impressed me. They clearly knew how to execute this play. It wasn't just something they pulled out of the playbook. It's a play they've worked on in practice. And it was a thing of beauty to watch.
Yeah, and give Philly credit. Like, their D coordinator is the old Detroit Lions coach. And, man, he was showing blitz on every play. And, yeah, it's the one time that ended up beating him and biting him in the butt. But I'm sure he'd want to run that play over and over and over again as far as, blitzing Matt Ryan and getting through that offensive line. Because they were tired. Yeah. They were really tired. Philly had a lot of energy on defense. And one play sunk them, and it was a thing of beauty. It really was.
So, Bears, Broncos. I'll go first.
All right.
Great defensive game. These two teams clearly knew each other. You called it. It was a 3-point game, or it was going to be a low-scoring game. At one point, I thought it was going to be 16-13. I thought they were going to kick the extra point and lose in overtime. But they didn't. They went for 2, which was a gutsy call. Much like the Jacksonville Houston game, I thought it was the right call. I just think Jacksonville made the wrong call on the right, with the right decision. Denver made the right call on an interesting decision. I'm not going to say it was the right call, but I'm not going to say it was a bad call. I thought it was funny that I think personally, Flacco purposely had the time run out so they would have to kick the extra point. And then the Bears jump off sides when he missed the extra point. And then they end up going for 2 again. And this time they get it. That was the craziest sequence of events I've ever seen. But it didn't end there. You have this unbelievable last-second drive put together by the Bears, and some will question it. I will not. The roughing the passer penalty was rough. I have more of a question about the 1 second on the clock crap. I actually don't think there was enough time on the clock. But
you put everybody else outside of Chicago.
Yeah, that was a gift from the officials. Must have bet on the Bears to win that game, because that's the only thing I can think of. No, I'm just kidding. It was a bad call, though. I mean, there's no way that there was 1 second on the clock when he went down, that they were able to then get a timeout. I didn't see Nagy by an official, and even if he was, that's, unless it was predetermined before the snap, look, he's going to go down, we're going to call timeout, but, then you can go to the clock and look at it. But I'm still under the impression that the officials have to see the timeout being called, or at least hear it. And let's be honest, there were no Bears anywhere near officials. Everyone's running around on the field. The crowd's going crazy. There's no way they heard it. The only question is, did they see it? But give credit where credit's due. This kid comes in and he's like, all right, 58-yarder, whatever it was. And he just slaps it right through the uprights. The only double doink was the Broncos' hands to their foreheads as they saw it go through the uprights. Great game. Congrats to the Bears. Sometimes you need those along the way. I'm never going to be one to sit there and go, oh, it's a cheap. I used to be that way. And then I got really into my coaching career, like deep into my coaching career. And I just kind of, if you noticed, Eric, I used to talk like that, right? Oh, you tainted win, officials, bad call, whatever. But if you've noticed over the last 4 or 5 years, that's gone away. And that's because when you've coached for as long as I do, you realize, yeah, sometimes you get those, those lucky wins, and it's what do you do with them? And now the Bears are 1-1, and I'm real interested to see what Chicago's going to do with this moving forward. It could be a great momentum booster. They're home against Washington on Monday night. That should be a blowout. And
they're at Washington.
They're at 3 weeks in a row. They're on the road.
No, they were at home against Green Bay.
Oh, I thought they were at Green Bay. I thought they were at Green Bay. Okay, so they're at Washington. That's right, they're at Washington. So I think that's going to be a blowout win. They'll be 2-2, and we'll see where the Bears go from there. But yeah, I was impressed. I was impressed with the way the Bears played defensively and in the clutch, offensively when they needed it. So there's still a lot of work to do in Chi-Town. The Bears are by no stretch of the imagination a dominant team right now, but who knows? Maybe this springboards them into something big.
Yeah, and they stuck to their game plan, and Trubisky still didn't have a great game, but they stuck to their running game plan, which is fine by me because they should have stuck to the running game plan against Green Bay and just ran it down their throats. But they finally learned something, saying, "Hey, we could do this." But the defense played really good. They got their first turnover. Credit the Broncos for coming out and saying, "You know what, we're going to throw quick passes because we don't want to sit back there and wait for the Bears defense to come and eat us alive." It worked. It really did. It worked. Emmanuel Sanders had a really good game. He had 98 yards receiving. He caught the touchdown to put the Broncos ahead. He caught the 2-point conversion. The same play that the Eagles ran to score their touchdown and ended up beating the Bears. It was very replicable of the same play that they ran, and the Bears have seen it 2 out of the last 3 games now. But Trubisky came up big when he needed to. He escaped the pocket, threw a nice dart to Allen Robinson, and Robinson was able to corral it and get down. And they got lucky with the call. What can I say? Hey, you guys didn't get a pass interference called on you, did you, in the NFC Championship game? No. Okay, there, it's all even. Anyways, but there's a big difference between 1-1 and 0-2, as far as trying to make the playoffs. And you know what? You and I, we both miscalled it in the preseason when we're like, oh, they're going to beat Green Bay, but they're going to lose to Denver, and they lose to Green Bay and they beat Denver. Imagine that. But I'm glad they were able to escape there with a win because, again, that defense was gassed. That the thin air was really getting to them.
Yeah.
Credit Fangio. He did a great job bottling up the Bears as much as he did. 3 horse crap roughing passer penalties in there, 2 by the Bears, 2 called on the Bears, I should say. And then 1, on the Bears game-winning drive with 37 seconds left. But, hopefully this springboards them, like you said, and they go into Washington and they actually score multiple touchdowns because that's what they need. And I like to see Mitch get on the board as far as throwing a couple of touchdown passes too, because they could really use a confidence booster. Washington or not, doesn't matter who they play. You just need to get the ball in the end zone because the schedule gets a little tougher after they're at Washington on Monday night. So, Bears 1-1. Yeah, they're in the thick of things. What else can I say? I mean, there's a lot of head scratching play calling by Trubisky. A lot of crazy missed throws by Trubisky. He missed a wide open Taylor Gabriel, but he had to get it over a defender. And Gabriel's only 5'8", so it's not like you can see him, and he's a big giant out there. So I just really think that's what the Bears lack is a really true number 2 wide receiver right now.
Agreed. Segment 2 coming right up. All right, segment 2. Once again, I think the Patriots are lying to us. And once again, I think there's something more to this. I'll tell you, my brother calls me after the Dolphins game, Eric, and literally like an hour after the Dolphins game, and he's like, dude, Antonio Brown is out in New England. He came into the locker room. His locker was cleaned out in a box, and they said, "See you later. You're not coming back. I told you about that." And then nothing hit the news. And Antonio Brown was a Patriot on Monday, but the players didn't report on Monday. And then Antonio Brown was a Patriot on Tuesday, except he wasn't there at practice. And then Antonio Brown was a Patriot on Wednesday, and then he wasn't at practice. And then Antonio Brown was a Patriot on Thursday, and then he tweeted that his threat to the woman that accused him. And no Antonio Brown. And then today, they announced they cut him. So my question remains to be, doesn't matter, except I'm curious. My brother's not somebody to make something up whole cloth like that and then actually happens. Usually my brother says, "Oh yeah, Antonio Brown's locker room's cleared out, and they kicked him out of New England," and then he ends up being the Patriots team MVP and the Super Bowl MVP for the New England Patriots. The fact that he said that and then New England cut him, was he really with Miami after the game? Was he really with the Patriots after the game in Miami? Or is my brother right?
Yes, he was. No, he was with. He declined to talk to reporters, but he wasn't the only one. And I think we went over this just over you and me on the phone. But no, there was every intention of him being on the Patriots, and then the accusations, the threats that he sent over text on Wednesday is what got the NFL and the New England Patriots involved. And Belichick really, he's like, I don't want to comment on this until we have more information as far as from the NFL, because Monday they spoke with the woman accusing Antonio Brown of what he did. And so they spent 10 hours with her. So no, Antonio Brown was not off the team right after the game on Sunday or Monday or Tuesday. But man, when Wednesday hit, and all of a sudden all these text messages came out, and then a second woman actually accuses him as well, and then Thursday happens, and then Friday, the news that breaks today, it was like, okay, it was just a matter of time. So your brother had a premonition. I'll still give him credit on that, but he was still a Patriot through that time. He was a Patriot for a total of 13 days.
Well, here's what I think is very interesting. I know about being accused of something you didn't do. LT can speak on this behalf too. When you're accused, you're angry not at the accuser. You're angry at the people that bring it to your attention when they don't do it properly. Right? So for me, I believe in facts. I don't believe in women. I don't believe in men. I believe in facts. But I also believe in behavior dictating whether or not the probability of you committing that crime, right? We will probably never know whether it's settled out of court or not. This isn't like a politician where it's all going to come out and we'll find out, or a legal case where the only option is jail or innocence. So it's going to be hard. So let's look at the facts, okay? Antonio Brown is accused of repeatedly farting in a doctor's face and laughing about it, right? There's now multiple women that have accused Antonio Brown of that. There's been times other players have commented on his behavior at the nightclub, on road games, and things like that over the years. You go back to his college years, right? Antonio Brown had a little baggage coming out of college. It's one thing when somebody's being accused and you look at their record and you're like, this person's squeaky clean. It's another thing when a person's accused and you're like, oh yeah, this is just yet another incident. So Antonio Brown never helped his case, but I'll tell you what else was alarming to me. Antonio Brown attacked the accuser. And that is an MO like no other of somebody who's guilty. You try to intimidate the victim back into hiding. When you're accused and you didn't actually do it, you don't attack the accuser. You attack the system and the lack of actual looking into the case that went on. If Antonio Brown lashed out at the Steelers or the Raiders and said, this is crap, they're trying to do me in, I would have a better feeling about his innocence. But when you're tweeting out threats, open threats to the accuser and taking and sending pictures of her children on Twitter, I'm sorry, but the facts start to pile up. So good riddance to bad rubbish. I hope nobody picks this guy up. He needs to just fade away into obscurity. And as far as I'm concerned, I'll say it now because no one else will. The man does not deserve to be in a bathroom stall within 100 miles of the Hall of Fame, let alone in the Hall of Fame. Because overinflated numbers in a passing era, right? You can look at his numbers and go, oh, those are Hall of Fame numbers. Take the era into consideration, take the individual into consideration. You go in the Hall, you should be a representation of the era, and there's got to be a level of respectability in your career on and off the field. Now, I know the Hall of Fame has some pretty shady characters in it, but anything like this, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm talking NFL Hall of Fame. We can get into baseball later. I don't think the man should ever go in the Hall of Fame, period. And to be honest with you, you could make the argument anywhere this kid played, he had a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback throwing to him. You look at Jerry Rice, he had Joe Montana, he had Jeff Kemp, he had Steve Young before Steve Young was Steve Young. And then he went on to Oakland and he had Rich Gannon, hardly a Hall of Famer. So, you know, we can get into that conversation when it's time. I honestly hope nobody goes after him because the man doesn't deserve to be on a football field. He doesn't even deserve to be at someone's house. He should just go away. Him and Ben Roethlisberger should get married and move into the mountains. And so we never have to hear from him again because they're equally ick, in my opinion. Anyway, that's all I want to say about Antonio Brown. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you pretty much touched on everything. I think this is the last we see of him in the NFL as well.
I hope so.
That's just, I can't see anybody wanting to take on the distraction. Went from $30 million guaranteed to $9 million guaranteed to $158,000 just for a game.
Yeah. All right, segment 3 coming right up. We're almost done. Okay, Eric, I know there's a game you're excited to cover. It's one I'm going to be watching this weekend, not by choice, but the house that I'm going to is full of Raven fans. So take it away.
All right, well, Baltimore, Kansas City. Somebody dubbed this the sequel to Manning and Brady. I don't get that yet. I don't think it's anywhere near that yet, or will be anywhere near that. But yeah, that's just some of the talk coming out of doofus world that is called the media. But call it what you will. Baltimore, Kansas City. Baltimore went into Kansas City last year. They were really close to knocking them off, but close only gets you close in hand grenades and horseshoes. So you don't get style points for losses in the NFL. It's going to be a good game. We'll see what kind of defense Kansas City employs. You know, they let Jacksonville kind of run all over them and pass all over them, mainly Gardner Minshew all over them. Sounds really bad, but they got Gardner Minshew in week 1, and you know they beat an Oakland team, and there was no scoring in the second half. Beat them 28-10, and there was only really one good quarter, and that was the second quarter there. So I'm curious what Kansas City team shows up. I'm also curious what Baltimore team shows up, because this is now Baltimore's second road game. I don't know if you really want to count Miami anymore. That's more like a luxury vacation.
Yeah.
But we'll see if Lamar Jackson can keep it up in a little bit more of a hostile environment this go around. And if Kansas City can still have their explosive offense, I mean, Sammy Watkins was on fire week 1. Demarcus Robinson was on fire week 2. No Damian Williams in this game in week 3. McCoy is questionable, so you might see a lot of the other rookie kid. Forget Darwin Thompson. I think Darwin something like that. Darwin Thompson. So we'll see. I expect high scoring. It's not the same Baltimore defense that we're accustomed to. Kansas City's defense is close to being the same as last year. I know they got Matthew in the secondary, but it's not like he's been lighting the world on fire right now. So we'll see how long it takes Kansas City's defense to adjust. But I got Kansas City in this game beating Baltimore, but a little bit of a high-scoring affair. I got this one 37-27, Kansas City in Arrowhead.
37-10 Chiefs. 5 turnovers for Baltimore, 3 fumbles by Jackson, and 2 picks. Though all 5 turnovers will be from Jackson. I'm sorry. The guy he's yet to play an NFL franchise in the 2019.
Hold on 1 second. Just because you lost in fantasy doesn't mean I'm going to get negative 10 points from Lamar Jackson this coming up Sunday.
I'm just saying, bench him. This is the first time all year he's playing against a real NFL team, right? You can't count Miami as a pro franchise. God knows the Cardinals are a joke, and you barely beat them at home with Kyler Murray tearing you up. Now you get to go to Kansas City against Mahomes and a much better defense than you've seen all year long. I'm gonna love it.
A much better defense? Kansas City's defense is hardly that great.
It's better than the Cardinals and Dolphins.
Well, I'll give you better than the Dolphins, but the Cardinals just, they didn't give up the big play. They gave up one big play to Mark Andrews, but it was Lamar Jackson with his legs
Eric,
them into scoring
the Cardinals gave up 23 points to the Ravens. They gave up 27 points to the Lions at home. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, 60 points in 2 games. They're giving up 30 points a game. That's not gonna.
He's got Minshew for 26 points in week 1.
Okay, but again, new quarterback coming in, confusing, not a lot of film. Didn't expect him. No one even heard of the friggin' guy. Which I'm going to talk about something. I'm telling you, there's something weird with this, and I'm going to touch on it in a minute because it's now bordering on bizarre for me. Like, I'm not calling him Minshew anymore. I'm calling him umbilical cord quarterback, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. But I'm sorry, but the Ravens had a real soft schedule. I mean, they basically played the quadriplegics of Miami and the deaf, blind, and dumb of Arizona for the first 2 weeks. Now they get a real football team, right? And it's at home. And Kansas City is a different team at home. Week 1, dude, throw that crap out the window. Week 1 doesn't mean anything ever. You hope you win week 1. You hope you look good in victory. But you know that's not the true makeup of what your team is going to actually be.
Or you look good in a tie.
Well, if it's possible, you come back and win and tie it. Yeah, I mean, that was a bizarre game, too. This whole year's been bizarre. I don't think this game is going to be close. I think it's going to be 37-10 Kansas City. I think it's going to be probably like 17-3 or 17-10 at halftime, and then that's going to be it. Then the doors are going to get blown off, and they're going to run away with it. So we'll see. I'm not a fan of this quarterback. I'm not saying he's a bust. I am saying he's a one-trick pony. If he's going to throw it, he's going to throw it deep to Hollywood Brown, who you can double cover, and other than that, he's going to run the football. That's what he's going to do.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to call you out and say that's false because wide receivers on the Baltimore Ravens account for 44% of catches, which is the lowest in the NFL. So, yeah, he can throw it deep to Hollywood Brown all he wants. He's just going to only do it once or twice a game. He's going to be throwing to Hurst and Andrews or whatever. If you can't cover them, sorry, you're going to get beat down the field. The Cardinals, on the other hand, when they played them last week, their wide receivers catch 82% of the passes. Yes, 82. That's the highest in the NFL. And so
how did you prove me wrong? How did you prove me wrong? I just said that if he does throw it, he's going to throw it to Hollywood Brown, who I'm sure makes up 30% of that 44 that you're talking about. Most of their offense is Jackson running.
No, most of their offense is handing it off to Mark Ingram and throwing to Mark Andrews.
Well, maybe. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean,
he only had 6 yards of rushing against Miami, but he had 120 against Arizona because that's what Arizona was allowing him to do.
I understand that. And again, I'm not saying he's a bust. I'm saying he's a limited quarterback at the moment. And his release makes Tim Tebow look like Joe Montana. So unless they fix his shot put throw, we'll see what happens. I know one thing, you can confuse him. If you go cover 2 rollover, which is a cover 2 rolling over into a cover 3, his head's going to explode and he's going to friggin' fart himself into oblivion because he's not going to know what to do.
Stop talking about Mitchell Trubisky like that.
Well, there's another one that you can confuse, right? There are quarterbacks that you can look, for all of his glory, that's the one coverage that Peyton Manning never could figure out. Now, you do a cover 2 rollover against Tom Brady, you're going home for the weekend with your butt kicked because he's going to put 400 or 500 points on the board on you. So I'm just saying, you can confuse the kid. All right, I'll do my pick in a minute. Hang on. Okay, well, we'll see. I'm going to look forward to watching that game. There's a game that I'm interested in, and I'll tell you why I'm interested in it. And you guys already know I'm going to talk about Minnesota and Oakland. But here's why I'm fascinated with this game. I'm fascinated with this game because I didn't think Minnesota was a good football team. And then week 1, I was like, whoa, maybe Minnesota's a good football team. I didn't think Oakland was going to be a good football team. And then week 1, I was like, whoa, maybe there's a good football team. And then week 2, I was reminded, oh no, don't. They both suck. You were right. Don't worry about it. Well, now they play each other. And I'm really curious to see, because I don't believe either one of these teams are going to be in the postseason when all is said and done. I really don't. But I'm curious to see how far Oakland has progressed under Gruden. And I'm curious to see if the slide backwards for Minnesota continues under Zimmerman, who I think, next to Sean Payton, is probably one of the biggest a-hole coaches in professional football. I've never seen a guy whine more about how his players get hit by another team's defense, and yet his defense has no problem going over, beyond, and way beyond the line of acceptability. And that's cool, right? I want to punch Jeff Fisher in the face for what his defense did to my quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater. Meanwhile, you got no problem with the way your defense was late hitting and cheap shotting Stafford, the Bears quarterback before Trubisky, anyone else in the league. Like, when it's your guys, it's cool, but when it's somebody else, well, that's just not acceptable. So I've never liked Zimmerman as a person. I don't know him, but as a coach, I can't stand hypocrisy. And when you sit there and you're a defensive coach and you're going to take issue with defenses playing through the whistle, take the tampon out and just call it a day, right? So I got no care whatsoever for Zimmerman, Zimmer. I do see a slide going, and I liked Cousins. A lot of people said he was garbage. Man, it's hard for me to argue that anymore. I mean, I used to be able to make kind of a case for him, but even his last year in Washington, I'm like, man, it's Two, he just doesn't show up. He just doesn't show up. If it's postseason, Anthony, you're being hypocritical. You like Andy Dalton. When does he show up in big games? Nah.
I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, I know it's out there, and I don't know. For me, you could explain some of Andy Dalton's big performances away. It's hard to explain Cousins away because he's got the talent. I mean, he went to the playoffs or missed the playoffs with the same team that went to a conference championship game with a lesser quarterback, and they were less injured. So I just don't know. It's hard. I'm fascinated to see how this game breaks down. I'm actually going to say Oakland is going in the right direction and Minnesota's sliding down. I think this game is going to be a 27-21, 27-23 type of game. I think Oakland's going to steal it. I think Carr's going to bounce back. I think the running game for Oakland is going to surprise some people at certain moments. But I think it's Cousins throwing a bad pick or two at the wrong time, and Oakland steals one. Will I be surprised if Minnesota blows the doors off of Oakland? No, it's in Minnesota, and it may be one of those things like the Lions in '85 that until they played the Bears at home in Week 16, they could not be beaten at home. Didn't matter who came into the building, Miami, Dallas. These are playoff teams, folks. And then Chicago came in, beat the living dog pee out of them, destroyed their quarterback. I think they tried to kill him. I mean, I legitimately think they wanted to murder Hipple.
Well, I mean, hey, Chicago 1985 or Chicago 2019?
Right, seriously. So, maybe it's going to be that way for the Vikings this year. They're just going to be a different team at home. But we'll find out. But we won't find out after this week, even if Minnesota wins big, because it is only Oakland. But I don't know. It's a weird game. This game I picked because it's a perfect synopsis of the season. I have no feeling about this year. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, I won't be surprised if the Cardinals win the division at this point. Like, it's that weird of a season. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But, man, it's a bizarre year. And I think that this game is a perfect capsule of that because you got two teams that are 1-1 that I thought for sure would be 0-2 right now. And yet here they are. So, yeah, what's your take on this game?
Well, I'm a little bit more sure of what I'm about to pick here with this game. See, if this were a Week 4 game and Oakland was 2-1, I'd say Minnesota loses because we all know that Kirk Cousins can't be a team that's over 500. Well, Oakland's 500, and they're at home. So, Minnesota is definitely going to win this game. Here's what I see. I see Dalvin Cook running for 150 yards and 2 scores. Yeah. Kirk Cousins hits Thielen, and he also hits Diggs for a touchdown. And I think Minnesota walks away with this one 31-17.
Wow, so you got a blowout here. Okay. It's a weird week. We picked some weird games this week. All right. Eric, I'm going to let you start with the Rams and Browns. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, let's get this news out of the way first. Aaron Donald is questionable, but there is no way I see him not going and playing in this game. Listen, Sunday night game, Rams going back to their old stomping ground where they were born from in Cleveland, and Sunday night, Baker Mayfield, big talker, wants to have the brightest light shining down on him, and well, it didn't work out really well for him in Week 1. Bounced back in Week 2. I really question what Freddie Kitchens was doing in Week 2, especially close to the end of the game, which had Baker Mayfield throw the pass, and he gets sacked. Man, that could be a career-ending injury. It could be a season-ending injury for a Browns team that has high aspirations this year. So run the ball, okay? Freddie Kitchens, take a page out of page 1, right there in the front, first sentence. Paragraph 1, run the ball. Great, thanks. Now that we got that out of the way. You don't want to do that against the Rams. The Rams will eat you alive, and they will destroy you, and they will put you in a hospital bed with a full body cast. that's what they'll do if you decide to pass on them when the game is already completely out of hand. As far as the Rams go, to me in week one, I know Anthony says throw that game away. You want to, escape with a victory and look good and whatnot, and that's what the Rams did in Carolina. I thought the game was not as close as the score indicated, but right here is going to be a really big true test. Rams back on the road in Cleveland. Dog pound is going to be going wild. I'm going to be part of the crowd, and I think you're still going to see the Rams win this game, and there's going to be a lot of offensive fireworks. There's going to be no David Njoku, and also, Chubb might not have as much running room as he has found in the first 2 weeks, or I should say, mainly in week 2, because he looked really good against the Jets. But that's what happens when you don't have 2 stud defensive starters back there. So, we'll see if Jarvis Landry steps up and Odell Beckham 155 yards and a touchdown the week prior. Let's see if he can keep it up. I think it's going to be fascinating watching Beckham versus Talib if they're matched up on one another, just because, they're both hard-headed and they both want to get their way. And I think you're going to see, a couple of tussles here and there between them. But I expect Goff and the Rams to walk away out of this game with a win, 27-24.
27-24. You got a close game.
Did you hear what I said earlier?
I had to step out. I'm not going to lie to you.
Okay. So I said the dog pound was going to be going wild, and I was going to be part of it.
Are you going to be there?
I'm going to be there.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Nice. I did hear that part. I thought you. I came in after you said full body cast if they throw it and they're behind. All right. Let me just say this, okay? I originally had the Browns picked to win this game. After seeing week 1 and then seeing how they beat the Jets in week 2 when the Jets had basically nobody on the field, my instincts on this game changed. Now, the Rams and Browns have a unique history. These two teams, unlike any other AFC, NFC matchup, had a phenomenal rivalry in the 50s. The Rams played the Browns 3 times for the NFL championship. They lost with a last-second field goal, 30-28. Lou Groza boots it as time expires, giving Cleveland its first championship in its first year in the NFL, and the Rams came up 2 points short. The next year, they get back. The Browns are arguably a better team than they were the year before. The Rams are arguably not as good as they were in 50. Yet, they're down 10-0. They come back and tie it. The Browns go up 17-10. The Rams tie it. Actually, the Rams were up 10-0. The Browns tied it. The Rams go up 17-10. The Browns tie it. And then with about 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, this should sound eerily familiar, the Rams throw a 74-yard bomb to Tom Fears, and the Rams win the game 24-17 as they hold off another Browns late drive. Then they play in 55. It's Otto Graham's last game. The Rams don't stand a chance. They blow the doors off them 38-14. And then these two kind of, they played 2 other times in the 50s. The Rams only beat them once, and that was in 51. So from 50 to 58, they only won once. But from 65 on, the Rams started to take over the series a little bit. Now, if you count the postseason, these two teams are 13-13 against one another. If you just count the regular season, the Rams all-time are 12-11. So these teams have played each other pretty tough over the years. I believe wholeheartedly that the Rams are going to win this game. I think that the Browns don't impress me. They don't look like the same old Browns, but they don't look as good as people made them out to be. I think Odell Beckham Jr. can be double covered. I think Marcus Peters can cover Landry by himself. I think Aaron Donald is going to play, and I think Aaron Donald is going to make an impact, but I think it's going to be Clay Matthews who has 2 sacks and a forced fumble in this game. And I believe that Littleton's going to show up big, and I think the Rams D is going to continue to play well. I think they're going to hassle and harass Baker Mayfield. And I think Jared Goff is going to continue to show that he's not only a good quarterback, but that he's not struggling. I think the Rams running game is going to have its issues. Because I do think the Browns have a pretty good defense, and I think Jared Goff will get hit a few times. I think Myles Garrett may even get a sack or two. But I see the Rams winning this game. I see the Rams winning this game 30-17, 30-20. I just think there's just too much offensive firepower and not enough defensive playmakers for Cleveland. And I certainly don't think that they have the offensive line's capability of blocking the Rams' defensive front seven. So I think when you put those two together, I think it's a recipe for disaster, and I think the Rams are going to win 30-21 or 30-17, maybe 30-20, give or take. But this will be a Ram victory, and the Rams will be, at least for me, a surprising 3-0. Eric? I don't know. You have a closer game than me. But let's talk a little bit. Let me just get into the Monday night game. Look, I'm not going to say much here. I don't even remember what the hell score I put down was. I think I had 24-13.
Jesus, so did I.
I had 24-13 Chicago. Look, I'll keep it simple. The Bears defense is going to be all over Washington. I won't be surprised if it's 21-3 at halftime. I won't be surprised if it's 21-6 after the fourth quarter. I won't be surprised if it's 24-10 or 24-13, and then Chicago kicks a field goal midway through the third quarter to make it basically a 3-score game again, and that's your final score. I don't think Washington has any chance of making this a competitive game. It'll be close at opening kickoff. It'll be close after Chicago's first 2 drives when they make it 3-0. But then after that, the doors are going to get blown off and Washington's going to fall apart. The Redskins have been putting points on, but that's been against Philadelphia and Dallas, defenses that struggle with the run. This team does not struggle with the run. Case Keenum is a garbage quarterback, and Chicago's offense is going to get a lot of short field opportunities to get out of their funk. I got the Bears winning 24-13.
Yeah, I've got the same score. I think Trubisky finally gets a couple of touchdown passes, which he desperately needs. The offense needs to get on track. I'm not worried about the defense. What I am worried about is the surface of FedEx Field, or whatever they call it these days. And I just want everybody to come out healthy. Yeah, it's still FedEx Field. Okay, that's what I'm looking at. I don't like Case Keenum against the Bears defense. The offensive line is already hurt, and they already got the most guys on IR already for a team this season.
Are you serious?
It just doesn't bode well.
Are you serious? Another injury?
No, they've got like 10 guys on IR right now.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
This coach needs to be fired in Washington. He really does.
I would say I think I said this in the show in the even before the preseason started, but I expect Haskins to start by week 6.
Yeah. Well, this is well on his way to doing it.
So,
anything else?
What's that?
Anything else, or is that pretty much it?
No, that's pretty much it. The Bears should win this game easy.
Yeah, I don't think there's much analysis that needs to go into this one either. All right, guys. Well, that's a wrap. I'm Anthony.
I'm Eric.
Horns up.
Bear down.
Go Rams!
Go Bears. Monday Night Football.
Boo Bears. Go Skins.